don't think Jeremy Corbyn necessarily lost the debate last night. The first poll out was 51-49 to Boris Johnson, but I think it was probably a draw in the sense that no one really won or lost. However, on that absolutely key point of what the man who wants to be Prime Minister thinks we should do as a country, leave or remain the European Union, for Jeremy Corbyn to simply be unable to answer either way strikes me as staggering.
Well, I'm not so sure that it is staggering. What he wants to do is negotiate a more credible leave deal than what is on the table at the moment from Boris Johnson, one that tries to safeguards jobs, safeguards public services, and then put that back to the country. And then he'll decide, based on the deal that he's negotiated, whether he'll recommend to the country to vote for the deal or recommend to the country to vote for Remain. I mean, I don't think that's staggering. And I think that's a way of trying to bring this desperately divided country back together.
But we have somebody...
Because we've got people like here in Leicester who...
But Mr Ashworth, we have somebody who says he voted Remain in the referendum, who in the 2017 election campaign in the Labour Party manifesto, which he was the leader of the party, said that they would absolutely implement the result of that referendum, which was to leave. Now, having come on this desk, actually, on Good Evening Britain, and said there would never be another vote, he now says he wants to have another vote, and he won't even say whether he personally thinks we should leave or stay. I mean, do you understand why, in an election where the Liberal Democrats say they want to stop Brexit, Boris Johnson says he wants to deliver Brexit, that the Labour Party is in serious danger here of looking utterly ridiculous, sitting on this fence with a leader who simply won't tell people what he thinks?
Yeah, but the country is divided, and I think it's entirely honourable for the Labour Party to try and bring this divided country back together. And we think the best way of bringing this divided country back together, where people have fallen out, people are arguing with each other all the time, we think the best way to try and bring us back together as one nation again
is to have another vote that's going to split us down the middle.
Where people can vote for Remain.
That doesn't make any sense.
Well, but we're saying, look, we can either leave with a deal that protects jobs and services, or we can remain. And I think that would be the final choice that will bring people back together. Because at the moment we're so divided, we can't just cancel it like the Liberals are proposing.
Well, you
but
could
nor
deliver
can we go
it,
along
which is
with
what
Boris
the
Johnson's
majority
deal,
voted
which we
for.
don't. But we don't believe that Boris Johnson's deal is in the interest of jobs. It's going to undermine jobs. It's going to undermine workplace rights. It risks the future of the National Health Service because of the way in which the future trade deals would cover the NHS. You know, the Trump trade deal, if that goes ahead, would have the NHS as part of that deal. So we don't think Boris Johnson's deal is in the interest of the country.
Okay, but do you understand? Do you understand why there's some
back together?
Do you understand why there's some scepticism that a guy who voted Remain and won't now say what he wants to do, is going to say to the European Union, I want to get a better deal than Boris Johnson's managed to achieve, who is a leaver, a Brexiteer, and then put that onto a second referendum. Do you understand why most people who voted to leave go, hang on a sec, the only deal that the Remain-supporting EU are going to do with a Remain-supporting Labour Prime Minister is one that is basically a version of Remain. That's the problem.
Well, that's why he wants to go into the negotiations and see if he can negotiate a much better leave deal, and that's why he is not saying
he's going to negotiate
which way he would support.
He's going to negotiate a deal that suits him, which is a Remain deal, and suits the EU, who want us to stay in. So if you're one of the 17.5 million people who voted to leave, you're thinking, well, the only choice on any second referendum that you would then come up with is a severely watered-down deal that's basically Remain in another guise, or Remain. That's not honouring the result of the referendum, as you pledged to do in the last election, is it?
No, I believe it'll be a leave deal, and it'll be based on a customs trading arrangement, which we don't have at the moment. And I believe a customs trading arrangement with the EU is what safeguards jobs. Because if we get this wrong, it's going to really impact on our economy. It's going to really impact on our ability to invest in the National Health Service, to invest in schools, which is why we've got to get a deal which mitigates the worst excesses of that Brexit.
You're a Remainer, right?
Well, yeah, I'm here in Leicester. We voted for Remain in the Leicester South division of the City of Leicester. We voted Remain.
You voted for Remain? Yeah, I did, yeah. And in the second referendum, what will you vote?
Well, look, I've always said I'm a Remainer, and I think the people here in Leicester South, I suspect, not all of them, obviously, because nothing's ever uniform anywhere, but I suspect most people here in Leicester South would vote for Remain.
So but you would vote for Remain?
As someone hoping to continue to represent them, that I would be, you know, speaking up on their behalf.
Why should a Leave voting Labour supporter vote Labour?
Because it's not just about Brexit, is it? It's about the NHS. It's about the cuts, the 20,000 police who have been cut from our streets. It's about the cuts to the schools. It's about rising poverty and homelessness and rough sleeping, which the Labour Party is talking about today.
If you don't
this general election.
You can't fix any of that stuff if you don't get Brexit sorted. You know that. You don't know how much money you'll have for any of these things if Brexit is still unresolved.
Yeah, and that's why Jeremy Corbyn said last night on the debate, 3 months to negotiate a better deal, and then another 3 months to put it to the country in a referendum, and then it'll be done, and then we can move on, and then we can invest in the NHS, invest in schools, invest in making our streets safer.
Wouldn't it be more honest with the electorate if Jeremy Corbyn just said, look, here's the truth. I'm a Remainer. I voted Remain last time. I think it's a bad idea, Brexit, and I will personally vote Remain.
Like you just did.
But I believe there's been so much confusion, we're going to have another vote and we'll leave it to the public to decide. Rather than this pretense that somehow, you know, we shouldn't know because it might influence people. It's nonsense, isn't it?
Well, I think he is doing an honourable thing in trying to bring this divided, fractious country back together, because he's saying to those who want to leave the European Union, we'll negotiate a leave deal, and he's saying to the Remainers, people who want to stay in the European Union, that you can vote for Remain, and then he'll put both options to the people in a referendum. The people will have the final say.
If the people vote,
democratic and honourable.
But if the people vote, given this great honourable action by your leader, if the people then vote 51 to 49 to Remain in the next referendum, and the Brexiteers go, we want best of three, what would you say to them?
Well, we've kind of had best of three, well, because we had a referendum in the 1970s as well, of course. But look, if that happens, then we Remain. But if it goes the other way, then we leave. That's democracy.
And what would you say to people if we vote to Remain in a second referendum by 1%, 2%? What would you say to the half the country then who are enraged that their vote in the first referendum was not honoured, but you would then want to honour the result of a second referendum?
Well, if that happens, we'll have been elected to a form of government by the British people with this policy. And if Remain wins, Remain wins. But if Leave wins, Leave wins. We have to implement whatever that referendum outcome is. We've had years of
Do you think that 17.4 million people believe that you're going to implement
That's exactly what you said in the last election campaign. It was literally in your manifesto. Literally what you've just said is what the Labour Party put in their manifesto. We have had a vote, we must implement it, the vote of the people must be honoured. Now, you're saying exactly the same thing again, only you want to ignore the result of the first referendum. Why should we believe you?
Well, we weren't elected to form a government in 2017. Theresa May and the Tories were. She came up with a deal. Boris Johnson voted against the deal. Actually, if Boris Johnson and his mates on the back benches then had voted for Theresa May's deal, would have left the European Union by now. So don't forget, the people who are angry that we haven't left, it was Boris Johnson playing games on the back benches so he could, push out Theresa May. That's the first thing. But but secondly, we also said in that manifesto we would only support a deal which we believed was the interest of jobs and prosperity and public services. Neither Theresa May's deal nor Boris Johnson's deal protects jobs.
And no matter what great deal Jeremy Corbyn comes back with, you've already said you'd vote against it. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how good his deal is.
Well, I've always thought that the future of the NHS and public services is best served by remaining in the European Union. But let's see what the negotiation comes back with. But I do know that here in Leicester South, people voted for Remain.
Yeah. I just want to talk about something other than Brexit.
I don't think people in Leicester South have necessarily changed.
I don't just want to talk about Brexit. We were talking earlier about whether the Labour Party is giving the impression that it hates billionaires. Jeremy Corbyn has said previously that he wants to see no billionaires and no poverty. Do you hate billionaires, Jonathan Ashworth? And do you not see them and their success as an engine for a healthy economy. No one wants to see anyone living in poverty. But I wonder whether getting rid of billionaires is the way forward. How many have we got? I mean, literally a handful.
No, I mean, I don't hate billionaires because I'm not a hateful person.
But you want to get rid of them.
I do believe, for example, that. But I do believe that the way in which our economy is working at the moment is pretty rigged and it's unfair. If you just go up the 10 minutes up the road from where we are, we've got shops empty because here in Leicester, because big firms, usually based in London, probably based offshore, are jacking up rents, and small business people here in Leicester cannot afford the rent on shops. And I want those shop units filled, because if you've got small business people taking out those units, they're employing people, they're contributing to the economy here. Our economy at the moment is not working in favour of people who want to get up, who want to form a business, who want to employ people and grow a business. It's working in favour of these big corporates, and they don't pay their taxes. And we want these big corporates to pay their taxes properly, to invest in public services, but we want everybody to be able to start a business and employ people.
Finally,
it's about changing the way our economy works.
Finally and briefly, because the Tories won't put any of their people on this week at all for us, in a little fit of pique, I'd like to offer you 25 seconds of completely free Good Morning Britain airtime to hammer the Tories in any way you see fit. Off you go.
Well, the NHS is in absolute chaos under the Tories. We've got elderly people languishing on trolleys. Last week, a 99-year-old war veteran waited 10 hours on a trolley. Tory ministers like Matt Hancock, who was responsible for all the austerity in the NHS, the architect of austerity in our NHS, should be ashamed. 4.5 million people on the waiting list, 660,000 people waiting beyond 18 weeks for treatment, worst A&E figures in history.
Okay.
This election is about the future of the NHS, and Labour's got a plan for it.
See, give you 25, you take 30. You're all the same, you politicians. But you know what? If they don't come on next week, you are welcome to come back on, and we'll do exactly the same thing all over again, because I admire your balls in facing the music, Mr. Ashworth. Thank you very much indeed.